St. Francis Xavier, 1506 to 1552. St. Francis Xavier, often referred to as the Apostle to the Far East and the Missionary on the Move, was born on April 7, 1506, in the town of Xavier, in Spain. After completing his preliminary studies in Spain, he went to Paris in 1525 and did his master's in philosophy. There he met Ignatius of Loyola. He became a companion and associate of Ignatius in founding the Society of Jesus, forming of Jesuit order. Loyola did his utmost to convince Xavier to join him in the founding of the Society of Jesus. Though at first hesitant, Xavier was eventually inspired by his example. On August 15, 1534, Xavier, Loyola and 5 others met in a crypt beneath the church of St. Denis in Paris and made private vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience to the Pope, and also vowed to go to the Holy Land to convert infidels. Having encouraged by Loyola to become a priest, Xavier started his theological studies in the same year. He was ordained a priest on June 24, 1537. In the following year, along with Ignatius, he went to Rome to work on getting the approval of the society. Pope Paul III approved the formation of their order in 1540, which became the Society of Jesus. King John III's request for Jesuit missionaries. The Portuguese settlers in India and elsewhere were losing their faith and Christian values. To restore these values, the King of Portugal asked the Pope to send missionaries to the region. Impressed by the Jesuits, King John III of Portugal asked the Jesuit order missionaries to work in his empire. Pope Paul III asked the new order to take up the mission. Though Loyola initially selected others for the task, Xavier stepped in when a fellow priest became ill. Francis Xavier left for India in 1541, on his 35th birthday. As he departed, he was informed that the Pope appointed him to be the papal nuncio in the East, to formally represent the Church there. He arrived in the region and colony of Goa, India on May 6, 1542. Missionary work in India. The Christian population had churches, clergy, and a bishop, but there were few preachers and no priests beyond the walls of Goa. Many sailors and settlers were former prisoners who had been recruited from Portuguese jails or were fleeing mistakes they made back home. None of them came to spread or live virtuous lives. Instead, they came to escape Portugal, find adventure, or to make fortunes. Still, they settled and made families. Xavier decided that he must begin by instructing the Portuguese themselves and gave much of his time to the teaching of children. The first 5 months he spent in preaching and ministering to the sick in the hospitals. He learnt the local language and composed a catechism. After that, he walked through the streets ringing a bell to summon the children and servants to catechism. He set sail for Pearl Fishery Coast in October 1542. First, he set himself to learn the language of the coast. He taught those who had already been baptized and preached to those who weren't. He devoted almost 3 years to the work of preaching to the people of southern India and Ceylon, converting many. He was often embarrassed by the conduct of his Portuguese countrymen, as they hampered his mission by their bad example and vicious habits. He built nearly 40 churches along the coast, including St. Stephen's Church, Coimbatore, mentioned in his letters dated 1544. He encountered difficulty in his mission because he usually worked to convert the people first, instead of their leaders. Xavier eventually decided to travel to Malacca and the Maluku Islands to evangelize the people there. He spent about 2 years in the region preaching the gospel of Christ. In Malacca in December 1547, Francis Xavier met a Japanese man named Angier who had run away from Japan and would later become the interpreter for the mission to Japan. Journey to Japan. Francis Xavier embarked for Japan in June 1549 with Angiro and 3 other Jesuits, landing in Japan in August the same year. After working for more than 2 years, he left the mission to Fr. de Terese and Brother Fernandez and returned to Goa in 1552. Journey to China and his final days. During his stay in Japan, he had heard much about the Chinese and saw it as a great opportunity to spread the gospel. On the 17th of April, he set sail with Diogo Pereira on the Santa Cruz for China. In late August 1552, the Santa Cruz reached the Chinese island of Shangchuan, 14 kilometers away from the southern coast of mainland China. A man had agreed to take him to the mainland in exchange for a large sum of money. He remained on the island alone with Antonio, a Jesuit student, hoping to enter mainland China. He died from a fever at Shangchuan, Taishan, China, on the 3rd of December, 1552, while waiting for a boat to take him to mainland China. His final remains. Xavier was first buried on a beach at Shangchuan Island and was later temporarily interred at St. Paul's Church in Malacca on March 22, 1553. On December 11, 1553, his body was transported to Goa, where it is now enshrined in the Basilica of Bom Jesus in a glass container encased in a silver casket, a setup established on December 2, 1637. Parts of his bones have been removed and distributed throughout the world, including Japan. Every 10 years, there is a public exposition of his body. Initially, the coffin was open to the public. However, due to incidents in which individuals took pieces of the body when it was opened, the last 7 expositions have been held in a glass casket. His canonization and legacy. Though he passed away at a relatively young age, Xavier accomplished much in his life. He was canonized with Saint Ignatius in 1622 by Pope Gregory XV. He is considered to be one of the greatest missionaries since Paul the Apostle. He not only preached the gospel in India but Sri Lanka, Japan, Borneo, and parts of China. In 1927, Pope Pius XI published the Decree Apostolicorum in Missionibus, naming Francis Xavier, along with Terese of Lisieux, co-patron of all foreign missions. He was the first one to coin the word catechist in the Church. The first lay catechists were from India, initiated by St. Francis. He wrote a manual for their identity and formation. Every year, on the 3rd of December, the feast of St. Francis Xavier is celebrated, marking the death anniversary of the saint. He continues to evangelize people through his incorruptible body,